This is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Hey, good afternoon, America. Steve Laffey here. Great to be with you all. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And sometimes you do shows because you have to do them. You got to get out some content. And sometimes you do shows because you want to do something about this issue. This show about higher education came about because last week at Brown University, I happened to be watching a clip or a show, and on came Commissioner Kelly, who's the New York City Police Commissioner. And he was at Brown University, where I grew up 3 miles away from Brown University. And he was trying to explain to a group of students why he was doing what he was doing in New York, or, pulling kids over and so forth and frisk them and so forth, or whatever the policy's called. Like it, don't like it, the place erupts. And purposefully, on purpose, the students, and I'm sure some people just from the town or from Providence, Rhode Island, stopped him from speaking. Just people standing up, yelling out stuff, everybody clapping, sits down. Kelly, the commissioner's, we're getting ready to go again, and someone else stands up, and it's like an Occupy Wall Street thing where they just go. They're not going to stop. This goes on for probably 10, 15 minutes, and on purpose. And of course, the people who run Brown University don't just like have these people thrown out. One of these ultra liberal universities, they don't throw them out. This lady who runs the joint, not the president of the college. So I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, and then they have the clips of people afterwards talking, and purposefully, students at Brown University are saying, yes, we weren't going to let him speak. We don't want him to speak. And that's not free speech when when we let these people speak about things we know are wrong. And I'm paraphrasing. It brought me back to my time at Bowdoin College, where I was told I couldn't speak on certain things sometimes, and was going a little too far, I guess, in the other direction. But we always let other people speak. And this is what's happening in higher education. It's not, by the way, that wasn't abnormal. This happens all the time on college campuses. And so as I started thinking about that and getting angry about it in some respects, I started thinking again about this giant problem we have with higher education, where we've created another bubble. The federal government, we say, what's a bubble, by the way, looking at higher education? Well, when the federal government gets involved in something and keeps prices of something so low, there'd be a lot more of it. So look at the housing bubble. They kept interest rates too low, allowing more people to be able to buy a home. And also, they got unqualified people. I don't mean bad people. I mean great people probably. But unqualified people to own a home, given the constraints of an illiquid investment, to own a lot of homes. And so everybody for a while was like, wow, isn't this great? And of course, we all know that was a total disaster. It was a total disaster from the standpoint that people ran the Federal Reserve, didn't see a bubble coming at all. In fact, they testified there was no bubble, that our elected officials couldn't shut the thing down, down in Washington. They can't seem to get anything right. So you look at student loans and say, well, what's going on? Is there a situation? Well, yeah, the situation where there are low interest rates to borrow. And then over the last, I don't know, let's call it 1965. 1965 was the Higher Education Act, and I jotted down some statistics. So in 1964, student aid from the federal government was about $231 million, not billion, million. 1981, when I'm going to college, it's up to $7 billion. Today, every year, $105 billion. Student loans now are $1 to $1.2 trillion. It's like $1 trillion with the public sector, the federal government, and about another $150 billion, whatever it is, with the private sector. And so we've created a bubble. We've kept it lower. We've got more people going to college than probably should. And with the great advent of the internet, along came these for-profit colleges. Some doing good work, many doing terrible work, dragging people in because all they want to do is here's how this works with the private for-profit colleges. And again, some are doing great work and bringing in people who are poor and getting them some degrees and so forth. But for the most part, they subsist off getting government loans. So what for-profit colleges did, and they made billions. And again, if I just wanted to make money, I should have been doing this when I got out of Morgan Keegan. Shouldn't have been the mayor. Shouldn't have tried to help everybody in the city with a bankrupt city. Should have went right to what was becoming a bubble and taken advantage of it. Buy a small school, get the accreditation, which is all what happens, by the way. Get the accreditation. So you get the accreditation, whether it's a regional accreditation, whatever it is, that makes you eligible to get these federal loans, Stafford loans, federal loans, whatever it is. And you watch the price going up. I mean, the amount of money given to students going up every year. And so therefore, you're doing it online with most of them, which is very cheap, and you're hooking them into these student loans, and we're finding that like 20% of these kids are defaulting on their loans because they never should have taken them out anyway. They shouldn't be at school anyway. So you got everybody doing it, by the way. You've got the public schools, you got the private, not-for-profit, although the way the private, not-for-profit schools and the public schools are running themselves these days, you would think that they are for profit for themselves. Here's some unbelievable statistics. I just grabbed some of these. New York University spent $72 million on interest-free loans for star faculty to purchase vacation homes out on Long Island. And in many cases, they don't have to repay these loans. University of Missouri, $38.9 million of mandatory student fees to fund a gym better than Nike's. The Auburn University president makes $2.5 million a year. University of Phoenix, one of the for-profits, $423 million in profits, 1% graduation rate. That's a for-profit. University of Kansas, we got five men coaches making $1.5 million each. And here's one I was looking up, Ashford, which is owned by Bridgepoint. It's a for-profit. They got 19.8% of the students defaulting on their loans. But the CEO received $20 million in compensation last year. So we've got a giant problem, and we've got to start solving it. Now, listen, let's back up a second. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We appreciate everything everybody's doing out there. We send out a sort of a blast update once every couple of weeks, and people are looking at some of the videos we've been doing. We got a new Fixing America Presents at LaffeyRadio.com. Check it out and send it to one of your friends. You have to send them the whole show. This show will be uploaded for everybody to view, forever, it looks like, after we're done with it. So you can do that. You can send them the show, the link to the show. But we do Fixing America Presents. We've got a new one up there. Take a look at it. Go on Facebook. We're Laffey Radio, /Laffey Radio on Facebook. Like us. Twitter, we're tweeting out there. We get the Laffey Buzz with a couple of messages a week. So the website's being populated with real solutions to real problems, whether it's banks, what we're talking about here today, and higher education, the budget, energy, and we're just going to keep going. So, but here we are talking about higher education. And, my story, I told you about what made me angry. These kids just wasting their education, not letting, because one of the great things about being at college, that's why I've never been that much for the for-profits, even though there's probably some great ones out there. And there's a lot you can learn online. But it was a total interaction I had at college. My story, by the way, to back up, is I was just a kid. My father, I remember coming into I was doing calculus homework. I was in 12th grade. And I was getting ready to try to figure out how to get to college. It was September of 1983, of 1979. And so there I was. My dad said, well, you don't really have to go to college. And, you could be a tool maker like me, or we could get you some other job. And I'm looking up, like, Dad, you see this calculus book? I'm going to college. At the time, I kind of knew, but then I knew more later on that he just didn't have the money. So my dad, who was called Doc because he was so smart and skipped a couple of grades and never went to college, grew up in the Great Depression. And so he just didn't know, he didn't have any money. I mean, he'd give me $3 to go to a movie, and I'd work my summer jobs and save my money. So I was one of these beneficiaries of this whole stuff. I applied to one college because my great high school teacher, great guy, just told me to drive up to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, and interview. I had this one wool suit, no other suit. It was the summer of 1979. It's like 100 degrees. I didn't even know how to get there. There's no Garmin unit in 1979. I never really left Rhode Island. So I go on 495, if you know the Boston area. I didn't want to go on 128 or through the traffic. So I went all the way around at 495. I get up there. I'm wearing a T-shirt and a pair of shorts. I find this gym. I changed because I was going to be sweating all the way. The car I'm driving, this old Galaxy 500, has like a hole in the back. You can see the ground as you're driving. And so I make it up there. I go to the interview, and they ask me, I never forget, they asked me where my parents were. And this is nothing against my parents, who I love dearly. But they couldn't go. They got other kids, and my father's working. So I said, well, it's just me. And the lady's look in her face was like, what? Your parents aren't here? And it's a very elite, top, I guess it was ranked 4th in the country among the liberal art schools or whatever. And I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed all the stuff we did. And because I was didn't have any money, they basically paid for me to go there. And that was great. I owned about $2,000 when I got out of Bowdoin College. So I don't have the $60,000, $80,000 story to tell like a lot of my younger friends do. And of course, a man died who went to Bowdoin Harvard Business School, and I had applied to Harvard Business School, and no one thought I was going to get in, but I got in. And the man who died, I got the scholarship that paid my tuition, like $11,000, which is now like $40,000, $50,000. So that's my story. I had to borrow some money, so I got out with very little debt compared to people even getting out of Harvard Business School. But remember, I was at Harvard Business School. I was there to go make money. So whether I had $100,000 of debt or $10,000 of debt, I had a very specific degree that's considered one of the best in the country. And I was going to get hired by somebody, and I was going to be able to pay back these loans. That I knew. And whether it was, again, what it was or whatever, I forget what it was, or a lot more back then, fine. So that's my story. And now I got kids. And so I've got these kids, and I'm trying to focus on what they're going to do. And I've come to the conclusion that the college degree is sort of the minimum requirement for some of the stuff they want to do. And I want to get them through graduate school. So I've made plans for them to get through college a lot faster than most folks. In fact, it looks like, forget about my love him, but my oldest, he's off at Columbia University. But my other two that are here with me now, one's going to graduate from Colorado State University if he doesn't get into the military academies, which they pay for, live here at home and get through at 20. And I got a daughter who I plan on getting through college at about 19. But that's us. That's what we're playing. And I want to get them into graduate school, get their doctorates. But everybody has a different plan. And what we've got going on in America is we've got people who can't afford. They've gotten out of school, and they cannot afford to pay back these loans. And we've got a situation where it's $1 trillion. Now, when we sometimes talk in the shows, we talked about $220 trillion about how much we're really in debt. 220 trillion with 12 zeros after the 220. Here we're talking about 1 trillion. But remember, among consumer debt, forget about mortgages in the country for a second. It's now the largest part of our debt. And people who are getting out of school, who are I figure it was one of these reasons that Occupy Wall Street started. People who had majored in sociology, anthropology, had $80,000 of debt because the average person getting out of school is like $34,000 in debt. But that includes the guy who went, or the lady who went to one semester at a for-profit, at Bridgepoint or whatever it's called, and went for one semester, $6,000, and didn't go to school anymore. There's lots of people with 80, 90. One of the vets that came by a couple of years ago, wonderful lady, she's way, way in debt. And they don't know how to pay it back. They just don't. And it's like really hurting the economy. And so we've got to come up with a solution. But first, we've got to acknowledge the problem. The problem is the federal government's been so much involved that they don't know how to get out of it. And our political people don't know how to get out of it, too. But we'll come back and talk about that. We'll take a quick break. We're taking different breaks right now because of people listening directly online are hearing too many breaks because of how we stream this. So we're listening to you. We're going to take a break right now. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages. What's the latest confirmation of insanity in Washington? Has the whole town gone nuts? Just pick up a paper, tune into 5 minutes of news, or simply look around. Has it ever been as crazy as this? Join Laffey every Tuesday at 3 as he breaks down the most insane news of the week. We call it Newsday Tuesday. Laffey calls it therapy. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America.
Call to serve. It has no sound, yet I have heard it in the whispered retelling of honorable sacrifices made by those who have served before me. The call to serve has no form, yet I have clearly seen it. in the eyes of men and women infinitely more courageous and more driven than most. The call to serve has no weight, yet I have held it in my hands. I will commit to carry it close to my heart until my country is safe and the anguish of those less fortunate has been soothed. The call to serve is at once invisible and always present. And for those who choose to answer the call, for their country, for their fellow man, for themselves, it is the most powerful force on earth. America's Navy. Force.
For your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium without your high school diploma. Too tired? Family trip. Sick day. Starting the holidays early.
Starting in the 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more of school in a year for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Well, I finally did it. I opened a 401k.
What? Why? Just wait for the inheritance. We've definitely got a rich uncle somewhere. We're one call away from the winner's circle at the Derby, dinners with multiple forks, a vacation home in the country, using summer as a verb.
You don't actually think that, do you?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs, the Rhode Island Society of CPAs, and the Ad Council.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
And if you thought private college costs had gone up a lot, well, it's nothing compared to many state universities, which educate 80% of the country's students. In California, state university tuitions have increased more than 50% in just 2 years. Sandy Baum says, just follow the money, or lack of it.
States are not funding as much of the expense of educating students as they used to.
At Santa Monica College, President Chewy Sang has had to hike tuition and decrease course choices.
Steve Laffey here. Steve Laffey, Fixing America. Great to have you back with us after that short break. We're talking about higher education and how we're going to solve this problem. But first, we got to acknowledge there's a giant problem. Just heard a clip about costs going up at the state level. We'll play some other clips here in a little bit. That brings me back to another sort of personal thing that I have to offer to the conversation. At one point, when I was in Cranston, Rhode Island, and coming home, I had a conversation with the president of the University of Rhode Island. His name is President Carruthers. He was a wonderful guy to me. This initial conversation we had around December of 2001, he explained to me he had a big problem at the college. We had talked about my background. I'd helped run a publicly traded firm, a Harvard Business School graduate, et cetera, et cetera. Big business background, financial background. And he said to me, I'd like you to go speak to the dean of the business school, Dean Mazie. And maybe you can help us out. And so I said, all right, what's the problem? He goes, well, a lot of our professors, they don't speak much English. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? He said, it's hard for the kids to understand. We have a problem in the business side. And we got these tenured professors. And I said, oh, okay, let me see if I can help you out. I didn't know what I was doing, I think, at the point. It was probably after I decided I was running for mayor. So I went and visited with one of the greatest guys I ever met, Ed Mazie, who had been a head of business schools around different parts of the country. And he and I became fast friends. And I ended up teaching juniors, upper-level course in business, and for that semester. And I got to meet some of the professors, and some of them were nice. Some of them hated me being there. And let me tell you why. Because I ended up teaching the top finance course at the University of Rhode Island for 3 years while I was the mayor. I only stopped it when I ran for the U.S. Senate. And I wish I hadn't even done it then, because I love teaching the kids. I was able to choose the top 15 students in the finance business area, take them in. We had a specialized trading room. I could set my own hours and so forth. But what I really noticed was the guy was right. kids would come to me in that junior year level class, and I couldn't understand why they didn't know some stuff. And the quality of teaching, quite frankly, was pretty low. I ended up getting the best marks. Ed made that would say, "Oh, the students like you the best," and so forth. And I really tried to focus in on what their needs would be. So here's a University of Rhode Island, a place that I loved going there. But when my kids, first of all, just so you know, they paid me about $3,000 a semester to be the top-ranked teacher in the business section, business finance area of University of Rhode Island, as a part-time, like adjunct lecturer, whatever you want to call me. Don't pretend I was not a tenured professor. Don't make up titles. But I did teach the top finance course. And the other professors hated it. And at best, these people were teaching like 1 to maybe 2 courses a semester. No more than 2. Many of them were on sabbaticals, and they were writing these articles that made no sense to me. They weren't like articles that I would want to read. They were just fluff articles for journals, business journals that I never heard of, and I still don't know about. And what they were really studying was stuff that I don't know, whether you want to trade stocks with eighths or pennies or so forth, but they really wanted to do research. They didn't want to teach, but they were making 6 figures, well into 6 figures. We took in their all the benefits that go with being a professor at a major university like University of Rhode Island. I'm sure they were all making well into 6 figures. And I was making $3,000. Well, you just heard this clip about costs going up. One of the major reasons, and I know Thomas Sowell, we've quoted him before. I know he's written articles about this. When he taught, long time ago, taught 4 classes. Every professor there should be able to teach 4 classes. I mean, if you have a wealth of knowledge like I did in picking stocks, it's not that hard. I mean, the hard part is making sure the kids, and teaching them the kind of skill set that's not being taught today to be successful. All the stuff I taught kids was about, here's what's going to happen in the real world. In fact, I remember looking at some resumes and calling Ed Mazie and saying, I got to do something about these resumes. The resumes at the University of Rhode Island were in terrible shape. And so I did resume workshops. And all I had to do for a resume workshop was to walk down the aisle, grab someone's resume, put it on an overhead. It was always going to be terrible. And then I would proceed to try to teach these kids how to go get jobs. They didn't know how to get jobs. So the school was totally failing them because the professors there weren't involved in any of this stuff. And we've seen that's one of the great reasons. I mean, it's not really the reason. It's one of the things that's happened. Our professors at these major universities simply aren't teaching. And then you look at the courses of what they're teaching. There might be, even at Stanford, one of the great universities, there's courses you can take, get credit for, that are in like aerobics. I mean, even I didn't have that in 1980. So you have this proliferation of courses that mean nothing to people. That they have them here in Colorado. Basket weaving stuff, where you can get 2 credits for that and people take them. They shouldn't be there. Then you have the remedial stuff at college where kids should have learned this stuff in high school. So you have a situation that is dramatic. And what we have is, in fact, boss, let's play a couple of clips here because I want to tell you about what people are really thinking. Let's play clip 3, if you could. Clip 3, Haunted by Consumer Debt.
I have $76,000 in debt.
Haunted by tuition debt, Larry's one of America's college degree owners facing a job market that has long ago thrown out the welcome mat.
Young people have twice the unemployment rate of most Americans.
College grads are stepping out into the world in the worst time to try to land a job, with around 2 million of them unemployed, forcing many to forget about their skills and agree to any job on offer.
And so you've got these kids, they've got the wrong degrees in the wrong areas. Many times they're so specific of what, especially these for-profit colleges are teaching now, and getting you signed up to have a degree that's just for pharmaceutical sales. That's ridiculous. 90 grand. So it's a very, very difficult situation, but it's not made easy by what's happening with what the for-profits are doing, for example. And the for-profits are taking in lots of these kids. This is one of the big problems. They're getting accreditation. They're teaching them, trying to teach them something just over the internet. They may have a small classroom somewhere, but mostly over the internet. And people are getting out and they can't find these jobs. But now they're on the hook. They're on the hook for a situation that they don't know what to do, and they can't really pay it back. In fact, if we can play clip 5, boss. Tell people this is what's really happening, where kids are getting out and finding that they got to take a job that's not below in stakes better or worse, but they can't get one that requires a college degree. They're taking ones that really don't. Play the clip 5, boss, please.
Over 300,000 waiters and over 18,000 parking lot attendants working in the U.S. are said to have a college degree. Moreover, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests as many as 17 million Americans with college degrees are forced to work jobs requiring less skills than a bachelor's degree provides, raising an entire generation of janitors with PhDs.
Now, the janitors with PhD is a little bit of a oversimplification in our hyperbole, but we have 130,000 janitors who have college degrees today in America, supposedly. So we're getting people out of college, all this debt, and talk about a job killer. Talk about a home buying killer. There are a bunch of people 27 to 35 right now who have no idea what to do. Well, we've got to come up with something for them to do. And we're going to take a look at after the next break. We're going to take a quick break here and look at what the proposals are in Washington and how wrong-headed they are and how little people understand in Washington about the real problem or how they won't deal with it honestly. Be right back after a quick break.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You see me around the neighborhood and you tell me that I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm one out of every 5 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we can grow up to be whatever we want. I want to grow up to be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry. There's enough food in this country to feed everybody. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 8 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we are Feeding America, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
What's the latest confirmation of insanity in Washington? Has the whole town gone nuts? Just pick up a paper, tune into 5 minutes of news, or simply look around. Has it ever been as crazy as this? Join Laffey every Tuesday at 3 as he breaks down the most insane news of the week. We call it Newsday Tuesday. Laffey calls it therapy. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared. It's like tiny nails in the air poke my lungs. I start to cough. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital.
Today, 1 out of 13 children suffer from some form of asthma, accounting for nearly 1/3 of all emergency room visits.
I feel like I'm choking. It's kind of like an elephant is on my chest. A little whistle sound comes out when I breathe.
But while your child may suffer from asthma doesn't have to make your child suffer. There are simple ways you can prevent your child's next attack. To learn more, log on to www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many.
I feel like a fish with no water.
Brought to you by the EPA, the Ad Council, and this station.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
It's as picture perfect as a college can get. But Sarah Lawrence College, set on this idyllic campus outside New York City, is also a portrait of what college in America has become. Really, really expensive. In fact, Sarah Lawrence has the dubious distinction of being perhaps the most expensive college in the nation. What does it cost to be a student at Sarah Lawrence?
The all-in costs for next year will top $60,000.
$60,000 for 1 year?
For 1 year.
Wow. Steve Laffey, Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Welcome back. $60,000 a year. I'm not that old. I may look a little, I don't look that old, I guess, but I got out in 1984. The cost had to be about $10,000 a year to go to a school every bit as good and as prestigious as Sarah Lawrence College. Now, we're talking about higher education and what we got to do about it in this to step back, to just take another quick look at where we are. It's $1 trillion+ problem. It's the biggest consumer debt we have. It's forestalling people being able to lead real lives because they were sold a false bill of goods. And when you're 18 years old and your parents are like, oh, Jimmy's going off to so-and-so. Or lots of times now with the for-profits, it's someone at 23, 35 getting back and saying, well, I got to get a college degree and I'll get it in this very specific thing. I'll get my master's in marketing for something. And they find out that it's not that important for what they want to do, or in a field that is closed down because it's too specific. But the $60,000 a year school is unusual, but there's a lot of schools like that. Now, if they were just colleges and weren't getting any federal grants, and they weren't getting any money from the federal government, and they were just, and there are schools like that, I guess, Hillsdale up there, right? They don't get anything. And they weren't taking the student loan thing as a percentage of their revenue. Well, then God bless them. That's okay. They can charge $60,000, charge $100,000 if you get away with it. If you get the best teachers and the best students and you get the best alumni who give the most amount of money, that's simply not what's happening. Of course, most of these places now are involved in such indoctrination of students. But what we're not doing here, we're not helping the poor. I mean, here it is right here. I saved this. If these grants and loans that we've talked about, that now we're up to $105 billion a year, if that was all helping everybody who was poor, not all, in a way that was helping mostly the poor get out of poverty, has this great equalizer that we believed in for many, many years. Great. In 1970, though, this is before all this stuff started building up, 12% of college kids came from the lowest 1/4 of income group. So they were kids like me. So if you put everybody's income into quartiles, at least 12%, not 25%, were coming. Today, it's 7%. How's that, Congressman Wrangley? How's that all the Democrats up? How did this happen over 40 years? Where less are coming from the poor to go to good colleges. One reason, by the way, and this is something. Here's one solution. Well, I was going to talk about this in the last break, but I'll talk about it now. But one is this ACT, SAT test. Now, here's me. No prep. Got a pencil. I got to take the SAT. I'm in Cranston, Rhode Island. I got to go to Cranston West, as I remember. I'm a junior. I take it once. My parents, we don't have like the $35 to take it. So somehow I get the money. I don't even know how. We got a check. We got it in. Go take the test. I forget what I got, but I got a pretty good score. Around me over at the other side of the city where kids had more money, kids was getting these prep tests. They were open. I went out the night before, I think. I mean, not that I went out and did anything wrong, but I just was out. I went in and took the test. I took it seriously. I studied. I mean, I took it while I took it. I did the best I could. I never studied a whit for it. Not a second. Today, listen, I'm in a position where my kids, they get, a prep situation. Stanley Kaplan's, Huntington, they go. All these kids are doing it, except for the poor kids. Kids who can't afford it. Kids like me. And isn't that the point of all these loans, though? Wasn't that the point? To bring some people out of poverty, to be the great equalizer, that some kid from the South Bronx could become a doctor? Because we could get him into a place and get him through for 4 years, and even if he took out some loans, he could pay him back. And now it's a country club thing. And I don't know why parents don't get it. I don't know why there hasn't a complete shutdown of this, of sending kids away from state schools, from your own state school. Because, by the way, there's many. Colorado State University, for all the problems, is relatively good. And the kids who come, in fact, I got a resume here. I got to call a kid today. You might help us out. It's a great resume. Someone's doing the right thing at resumes over there, unlike at University of Rhode Island when I was there. There's one solution. We've got to either change these tests, these entrance exams, so no one can even study for them, or just not have them. And by the way, the one college I got into didn't accept SAT scores, Bowdoin College back then. I forgot to mention that. They didn't accept them, and they happened to be needs blind. So after they accepted me, then they said, oh, wow, we're screwed. We got to pay for all Laffey's education. They don't have any money. His parents don't make enough money at all to feed the 5 kids or whatever. So, but it was a needs blind situation where they accepted people before they decided on financial aid, and I got an awful lot of it. But kids today aren't always in that situation. So we've got parents who are off kilter. In fact, just before the show started, I was talking to my man Boris. We were talking about Georgia, a state that I love. I love going to Georgia. I miss the Deep South. I love the Deep South. And I've been in Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is. But they've got this Hope Scholarship where, and I went and looked it up quickly. And the Hope Scholarship is, you've got to have a 1200 SAT, and you got to have a 3.7 grade point average now. But if you have that, you go there for free. You go to college for free in state. Well, again, it definitely is a situation in Georgia, whether they like to admit it or not, where relatively poorer people through the lottery. That's how it gets funded. Through the lottery, where relatively poorer people are playing the lottery, and they're funding through that tax of the lottery, because you don't really win. When one person wins and you don't know who it is, but they have a great life, I guess, or most of them have a bad life after they win the lottery. But be that as it may, it's relatively poor people, and who's getting the 1200 and the 3.7 grade point average? Well, that's by and large wealthier kids because their parents can afford to get them into the SAT prep tests or ACT, two separate tests, right? So how can that be a good thing? How can that be something that we get these kids out of poverty? Isn't that what we want to do with these? Weren't all these programs, in fact, everyone started in 1964, everything we talk about, not everything, but the war on poverty and so forth, and these grants that started, and the federal loans that started to go from $500 to $5,000 to $5,350, and so forth. They were designed under this principle that relatively poorer kids would get out of poverty by going to college, and we give them a chance. And if they blew it, they blew it, but we give them a chance if they were a really good student. And that's not what's going on in Georgia today, and it's probably not going on in a lot of states. And so we have a really tough situation. In fact, boss, let's play clip 2. This is CBS about what it really is costing and what's happened over the last 10, 20 years.
College tuitions have risen at twice the pace of inflation. In fact, they've doubled in just 10 years.
Faculty salaries have been pretty stagnant, but their compensation goes up when healthcare costs go up.
Higher costs, growing enrollment, it all adds up to a mountain of debt. The nation's total student loan bill now tops outstanding debt on all of our credit cards. $1 trillion and counting.
So $1 trillion and counting, and the growth is double the rate of inflation. And when you go on these campuses, heck, we all wish we were 18 just hanging out on the campus. I mean, the Taj Mahal that's been built, we could go through school after school with basically your money, many of these public schools, building, and it's all keeping up with the Joneses, how big the swimming pool is. Here in Colorado, by the way, we're debating whether or not to have a giant football stadium right in the middle of downtown Fort Collins rather than where it is out east. And it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're trying to get the private sector to raise a certain amount, and they'll borrow the rest, and it'll come from the taxpayers. A lot of it, couple $100 million. And I keep thinking to myself, and this, by the way, whole thing about football is another topic we got to cover, I suppose, because the whole thing about football is that, gosh, when you see Tony Dorsett, I can't remember what happened last week, and it's one of these concussion things. I just now that so many people have been playing for many years, and the pads, haven't gotten as big as the strength of the people, when the heads are getting whacked back, and you say, wow, we're really going to encourage more big-time college football here? It's amazing that people aren't saying, why don't we have the best medical school? What could we do with $250 million? And I guess, by the way, if the people want it here and want to pay for it, it's their school. And everybody's going to go to the football games. It's going to be like Boise State, and everybody's going to be happy with a purple field or some other nude color field. That's their money. But so much of this money comes from the federal government. And so much of the student ability to pay has come from the federal government. We've made it easy. So we've got people going to college in all different forms, which in some ways is great. But they're not going to pay it back. We can almost tell kids going in, you don't need this. This is not a crutch. College isn't for everybody. It's for a lot of people, and by the grace of God, I got to go. I was the first one in the Laffey family to go to a 4-year college. Still the only one. No, my son, except for my son, my oldest son. Sorry, Pete. And of course, he's doing great now. And we're blessed to be able to do this kind of stuff with my kids here that are still with me. But we've got to switch the situation around. So we're helping the poor, so that these things, are for kids to get ahead. These loans are for kids to get ahead and help the middle class. But now, look at Georgia. It doesn't matter what your income is. You just get it, Well, anyway, we've got to take one more break here in a second. And we've got to come back with what the federal government is actually doing and what Barack Obama has proposed. He's proposed several things that really make no sense at all and won't help our kids. We've got to find a way to help our kids. And if you're listening out there, tune into Laffey Radio. Tell your friends. A lot of people are starting to listen in. We love all the likes on Facebook. We're on Facebook at Laffey Radio. We tweet. Follow us on Twitter, if you would, Laffey Radio. We're putting out a lot of new material. We'll take one more break, come back with what the federal government's actually doing and why it won't work. Steve Laffey, be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
I am an American soldier.
I'm a warrior and a member of a team.
I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values.
I will always place this first.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never accept defeat.
I will never quit.
I will never leave a fallen comrade.
I am disciplined.
I am disciplined.
Physically and mentally tough.
Trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills.
I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself.
I am an expert and I am a professional.
I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the
enemies of the United States of America in close combat.
I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
There's strong, and there's Army strong. See what it takes at GoArmy.com.
Picture this, your next trip, Utah, 5 national parks. First, Zion. You're walking, the ground rises, the ground drops, the ground becomes water. Next, Bryce. You're riding a mule. You're riding a mule under giant orange strip castles. You are not dreaming. You will not forget this. On to Capitol Reef. Take the scenic route, the really scenic route. Take a path you've never taken and see the stars for the first time. Now for Canyonlands. You're riding a bike. You're riding a bike on Mars. Now you're riding the rapids. Class 2, Class 3, Class 4, Classic. Arches, 5:32 a.m. Some things are worth racing the sunrise for. The horizon lightens. You round the corner. Whoa. This is Life Elevated. The Mighty 5. 5 iconic parks, 1 epic experience. Plan your trip at visitutah.com.
What's the latest confirmation of insanity in Washington? Has the whole town gone nuts? Just pick up a paper, tune into 5 minutes of news, or simply look around. Has it ever been as crazy as this? Join Laffey every Tuesday at 3 as he breaks down the most insane news of the week. We call it Newsday Tuesday. Laffey calls it therapy. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
Enter the politicians. President Obama worked the college circuit during the week, decrying a plan to sharply increase interest rates on federal student loans in July.
Tell them now is not the time to double interest rates on your student loans.
Republican rival Mitt Romney was close behind.
I fully support the effort to extend the low interest rate on student loans.
But how to pay for it?
The bill is passed.
House Republicans voted to use money set aside for the Obama health care program, certain to be a non-starter with the president. For their part, Democrats proposed closing tax loopholes for oil and gas companies.
Oh my gosh. That was their proposal. This is 2012. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. They're going to close the loopholes on gas and oil exploration to help pay for the low interest loans that students get, lower the market rates. Another thing that creates the bubble. And it's Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're at LaffeyRadio.com. We appreciate you listening in. And I love that clip because it's 2012. It's the election year. And Mitt Romney knows that's the wrong policy. And if he was sitting here today, he'd say something different. But on the campaign trail to get votes, they just make stuff up, tell you what you want to hear. And we, I guess, just bought into it, I suppose. And that's another reason Romney lost. You just heard there's not differentiating himself at all. Just saying, yes, we got to keep these rates low. Well, just so you know, that another year went by, 2013 came, they had another argument about these Stafford loans and the rates that they were going to charge. And they couldn't agree, so they just kicked it down the road, just like the budget deficit, just like the debt limits, just like really fixing any problem. Like they kicked it down the road a couple of years. They split the baby in half and changed the interest rate slightly and still lower the market. But the lower the market rate loans that people have to know when they're going to pay when they get back are inducing more people to go to college than probably should. Listen, if one of my kids say, I'm not going to college, I'm going to do this, and that, I'd be like, fine, let's get you some education just for that. And the great thing about Colorado, one of the great things about Colorado is that you can do that here. Where my kids go to school, there's so many charter schools. If you only wanted to, not only be a great job, if you want to be able to fix Porsche cars, you can find a school that can get you a certificate and go that direction. Don't owe any money. Get out of high school, have a certificate in fixing something. But they don't want to do that at the national level. They want to keep the rates low, have this debt be built up. And remember, this debt is more than all the credit card loans and all the Americans have outstanding today. Student loan debt is, and it's crushing Americans. Let's go to some of the solutions that they have. Heck, we're going to run out of time again. Well, first of all, what does Barack Obama want to do? He just came with some recent proposals. These are Democratic plans. The first one is to tie federal aid to graduation rates so that you'd go to the schools and say, hey, how many are you graduating? You know, what percentage? The higher you pass these kids, the more that we'll be able to get you in federal loans. Barack Obama, every proposal, like this whole healthcare plan, it just denies human nature. He's literally living in some other world. He's never been in the business world. You know, people don't, there's something called grade inflation. It's already happened. And it happened even when I was in school. There were gut classes. We call them GUT classes. And I never took any of them. But many of my friends said, I got to take a couple of guts. This professor always gives out A's. I did one professor. That's the one we rented a house from. He gave out a lot of A's too. And I got an A. They called them excellence back there. But so I guess that was a gut. But study of Israel and Arab dilemma, I think it was. But I studied a lot in it. But they're just gonna give everybody an A. They're going to pass everybody. What do you mean tying it to graduation rates? So everybody will graduate and no one will know anything. And we'll have $2 trillion of debt on the backs of the people who can't get jobs. It just denies human nature. The only place I ever attended, Harvard Business School, they had no gut classes. Everyone was hard for me because I was directly out of school. And they gave 15% of the class excellence, 70% satisfactories, and 15% low passes. Now, I guess if you kick the professor in the stomach, you get a flunk. But basically, there's low passes. And if you got too many low passes, you got kicked out. And so that's how they did it. And of course, some people would say SAT is where it's at. That just get through the place because no one cares about your grades, and mostly no one did. Just getting through the place. But that was the only place that I didn't experience any grade inflation. What else does Barack Obama want to do with the Democratic Party? They want to cap payments. This is how they're going to solve a problem, by the way. They're going to cap payments at 10% of discretionary income. So if you make less income, you pay less. And they're going to forgive the loans at 20 years. So 20 years out, I guess if you just pay the interest and whatever you got to do, they'll just forgive it if you can't pay it back. So what's that going to do? Why would you take it seriously? Why wouldn't we then produce more anthropology majors than ever before? It's only going to be, by the way, don't get a job. You work at Starbucks. Get a PhD. Make 20 grand. Then I don't know what your discretionary income would be. Would it be 15 grand? Pay them $1,500. You get a $200,000 education. I'm not saying everybody would do that, but why is that the answer? I mean, why would that be the answer? It's not the answer. And by the way, the president also wants to, this is unbelievable, by the way. Not everything's believable with this administration and the last administration. But he wants government jobs in nonprofits. He wants to get rid of all the loans that they have outstanding at 10 years. So this is how he gets away with even saying this, I don't know, in a capitalist country, which is, hopefully still a capitalist country. But his proposal is simply that, why would the government sector be the job that you'd want to get then afterwards? I mean, we do things with doctors where if you go work in a rural area, they make movies about it, right? That guy with Parkinson's disease. So they make movies about doctors end up in rural areas, and because there's no doctors out there, and they'll forgive your loan a little bit faster. All right. But just working for the government or a nonprofit, and by the way, nonprofits today, what really are nonprofits? Conservative, Democrat, liberal, whatever. A lot of them are very profitable for people. You got CEOs of nonprofits making $600,000 a year. So none of that. All his solutions seem to defy any kind of realization that human beings will find a way around the rules. So what do we got to do? Well, one thing we got to do is we've got to start tapering this thing down. This is something I don't think, unlike some stuff I've talked about, I don't think we can end it overnight. But we've got to now change the rules dramatically about who's getting these loans as we wean the government out of it. And yes, you're going to have to raise the interest rate for the people outstanding, not keeping them as low. Raise them to be at market rates. People then will, for the new loans at least, then people go into college be like, wait a second. And people have got to be informed when they take these loans out, how much it's going to cost to pay back. And then we've got to get all this money that's going through these colleges. If we start cutting this back, believe me, there'll be a dramatic decrease in the cost of education. We've got to get professors back to teaching. Sure, listen, at some of these big universities and small universities, it's great to have these professors working on some real great raw research. I want to figure out how to get the solar power harness better. Great. I'm sure there's a lot of people working on that. I want to know how to make neutrons smash into protons and linear accelerators and so forth. We've got to be tops in raw research. When you see what these people, these professors and all these subjects are writing articles on and not teaching one class a semester and being tenured professors, you'll throw up. The vacations that they get, the leaves of absence that they get to go do stuff and they don't even do it, it's outrageous. That's one of the people are a big cost structure. And that's why the for-profit colleges that are coming in can be of great help. I mean, a lecture by a great professor can now be seen by many, many people. Go check out, by the way, Khan Academy. They're doing this stuff for free. So eventually, again, the market's going to work with, and we've got to understand as employers, that's not, to me, it never was, by the way. It was never about what special degree you had. We hired people from Harvard Business School, great guy. And we also hired people from Indiana University. We were looking for young, hungry people that wanted to make a lot of money in the private sector. But for example, when I went out looking for the best finance director in the country, I don't think I ever asked, God bless his soul, Jerry Barron, when I was becoming the mayor of Cranston, even where he went to school. I actually asked around to see who was the best person for this job. So young people have to understand they can get out with a good liberal arts education and then learn a trade. But you can't start off having all this debt. So we've got to take this $1 trillion down and make it so it goes down every single year and get it down to I don't know if we'll ever get it down to nothing. Let's be realistic. Let's get it down to a realistic number. And then let's focus in on what we should be focusing. How are we going to get the poor kids, relatively poor kids, out of poverty? How are we going to get them a shot? Yeah, they're going to have to borrow the money, yes. But they're going to be focused like a laser beam and change this ACT, SAT stuff. It should be a random test that nobody can study for. And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be that you should be able to study for these tests and get much better grades than kids who don't have the money. Now listen, my kids will do it. We'll do whatever parents will do whatever they can for their kids. They will. But a lot of less kids should be going to college. And all these for-profits, I would say to them, it can't be that you have a business model where 89% of your revenue is student loans. You should be able to go out, if you're for profit, you should be able to go out to the private sector and have a situation where you're getting those loans from the private sector for these kids. because they're going to pay them back. That'll put the hook on these for-profits. And let the internet take over in many respects. But I've never been a great believer, and maybe I'm wrong on this, maybe I missed the boat on this, but that just internet courses would solve all the problems. Now, we started this conversation talking about Brown University and the outrageous events about shutting down public speakers. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but it's caused me to start talking about higher education, looking at the default rates. By the way, one last thing. Look at the default rates of some of these for-profit colleges. Delphi University, 26%. These are kids just default rates of the loans outstanding. Colorado Technical University, 15%. Kaplan College, 20%. I don't even know what these are. Everest Institute, 24%. It's outrageous. This is ripping people off. And they should be going after these people and saying, we're not doing this anymore. So there's a lot of ways we can solve higher education. And we're going to have to change the bankruptcy laws again. If you notice, in 2007, they were changed to protect the people on the hook. We've got to soften that so people can discharge some of these loans in a better way. Same thing with credit cards. That's a different discussion. Anyway, we're running out of time. It's Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. LaffeyRadio.com. We'll be back tomorrow with Newsday Tuesday. A lot of different subjects we can take one at a time. We like doing that format. I look forward to it. And follow us on Facebook again. I know, by the way, I'm heartened that people are doing this. This is like, I had a guy tell me, you can't put yourself on the hook on all these issues. We have to fix America. We need your help. We'll talk to you tomorrow. God bless you all.
You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network, LLC is prohibited.